Hello, world, and welcome back to the Glen Alex Show. Hi, I'm Glen Alex, licensed clinical social worker, wealth counselor, top mentor on the Wisdom app, and author of Living in Total Health, the 2021 Indie Book Award winner for health and wellness. Living in Total Health is available in hardcover, ebook, and paperback, and you can order your copy on glenalex.com. My life's work is about health. And I am on a path to help as many people as I can be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. The life experience I call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. And I believe that those living in and in pursuit of total health on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels will right the world's wrongs, will end isms, will end violence in all forms to make this place so much better for all of us. And I hope you join us on this path because we can do this. On each episode of the Glen Alex Show, we focus on a different aspect of health. And for this episode, I wanted to focus on digestive and gut health, which I'm really excited about because of my own issues. So please help me welcome my guest, gut expert, Amanda Wikan. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Glenn. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for making time. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. And I can't wait to jump into this. I know we can't cover everything. We'll see how much we can get in, though. So
Yes.
go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm a registered dietitian. I have a master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine. And what that means is my specialty is really looking at the interconnected systems of the body and what the root cause of dysfunction is. So sometimes that's nutrient deficiencies, sometimes that's gut health issues. And my passion is all about helping people find their personalized path to wellness.
That is right up my alley. I am not a proponent of one size fits all. So any of these programs and regimens that are targeted for the masses really bother me because we are individuals and we have individual biochemistry and lifestyle issues, etc. And is that what you mean by bio-individuality? I saw that on your website.
Yeah. So, I think for all of us, our path to whatever we're passionate about is a result of our own journey. And I know, just Glenn, from what I know of you, that's certainly the case for you and for myself as well. And my journey kind of started with some GI issues. And at the time, I didn't realize it was a result of a deeper issue, but it led me down exploration of gut health. But even beyond that, it led me to functional medicine. It led me to nutrition. And it really helped me to understand that there's more to the story when it comes to health. And that's something I love about, your purpose, combining the mental, emotional, spiritual, those aspects are so important. And I think it also is the case with gut health and nutrition. You're looking at everything from nutritional imbalances, diet and lifestyle factors, even childhood traumas can influence gut health in the long term.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And thank you for pointing out my approach to health it is not a one answer for anybody.
Right.
Yeah. So awesome. Awesome. Now, just to give us an overview of why gut health is so important.
Oh, that is a big question. I'll do my best. So gut health is kind of at the center or the root cause of everything. So your gut microbiome and the balance of your microbiome actually influences everything from just your everyday experience of digestion. So whether you're having symptoms that are problematic like constipation, gas, bloating, or even on the the extreme end of that spectrum, ulcerative colitis or other inflammatory bowel diseases, your gut health is at the root of all of that, but it also impacts other systems in your body. So gut health is critical for brain health, for protection well into your advanced years and prevention of dementia. It's essential for emotional well-being. So 70% of our immune system is in our gut, and 90% of our serotonin is produced by our gut microbiome. So it has, far-reaching impacts.
Yeah, sounds like. I actually did some research in preparation for you. I
Wonderful.
just wanted to add to the little bit of knowledge I have in this area. And I was so surprised by the fact that so much serotonin is produced in the gut. I always thought it was neurotransmitters were produced in the brain, but this one's in the gut. And so, what impact does that have on mental health?
I mean, it's huge. So a lot of the anxiety and depression that people experience can be mitigated to some degree by improving their gut health. And it depends on the person, of course, and what's happening at a deeper level. But I would say the majority of people are going to see improvements to mental and emotional well-being by supporting their gut health. And that means different things for different people in terms of, what strategies are utilized. If someone has, if their gut microbiome is healthy, but it just doesn't have the fuel that it needs. And when I say fuel, I mean the fibers. They're typically called prebiotics, so it's different than a probiotic. A probiotic is a beneficial bacteria. A prebiotic is a type of fiber that feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut microbiome. And your gut microbiome, when it's fed these fibers, which come from whole foods, but they also come from supplements that we can utilize, they produce short chain fatty acids as a result of being fed. So it does two things. Produces these short chain fatty acids, which have far reaching implications for health, and it helps to grow the beneficial microbes. And the importance of that is our microbiome should be highly diverse. So there should be lots of different types of microbes, and we want the beneficial types. So we don't want a dysbiotic microbiome, which might mean that there's a lot of diversity, but it's of different types of microbes that have harmful effects. We want the ones that produce these beneficial effects. And so by feeding them with fiber, you grow more of those beneficial microbes, and they crowd out the ones that have the harmful effects.
Okay. That is a lot to digest, no pun intended. Um, okay, so I'm glad you clarified that between prebiotics and probiotics, because it had been my understanding that a prebiotic is a food substance that turns into a probiotic, but that's not what you just said, is it?
Nope, that's not the case.
It's fiber that feeds the probiotics.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So when we use the word probiotic, what we're talking about is supplementing your microbiome with bacteria. So there are probiotics in the foods that we eat that are fermented, and I should say that are living still, because some of the foods that are fermented are then pasteurized and they lose the living microorganisms. But
Okay.
if you're eating kimchi or fermented sauerkraut that hasn't been pasteurized, you're introducing living bacteria and other organisms into your microbiome. And that's a probiotic. You can also take a probiotic in a pill form. And that's somewhat different than your gut microbiome. So when I was talking about the prebiotics feeding your gut microbiome, that's really important. And yes, they're technically a probiotic in your gut, I guess, because it's a living bacteria. However, a probiotic is truly a you're ingesting a living organism that confers a benefit to your microbiome. And the importance here is that you cannot inoculate your gut with these living bacteria. So when you consume a probiotic, whether it's a fermented food or a pill, it will only remain in your microbiome for about 3 days max before it is excreted with your stool. And
Okay.
in those 3 days that you've consumed it, it's providing the host, you, with multiple benefits. Um, Now, it's slightly different, right, than feeding your own microbiome, because you're more using the probiotics to confer a specific benefit. Would you like me to get into some of what those are?
Sure. I just have one question before I lose
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the sauerkraut and the kimchi, the fermented foods that are or are not pasteurized, would the
Mhm.
food label actually say if it were pasteurized or not?
That's such a good question. It will say that, and the easy way to determine that is really just it can be as simple as this. If it's in a can on a shelf that is not refrigerated, you know it's been pasteurized.
Okay.
If it's in the refrigerator section, it's living. And that goes for kombucha, that goes for pickles, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir. Those are all refrigerated typically. And well, some are, some aren't. But if it's in the refrigerator section, you know it's living.
Okay. That's a really good, simple way to make that differentiation.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Okay. So yes, you wanted to get into the
Yeah.
benefits?
So probiotics are a really interesting and fascinating um, tool in our toolbox, and it's available for all of us, and they can have different impacts. And I like in my own practice to use those with the best clinical research behind them that have been shown over and over to have a specific impact. Now, they have many different impacts, but we can utilize certain ones for different strategies. So one of my favorite probiotics to tell people about in the wintertime is Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, which is the main bacteria in the very popular probiotic called Culturelle. And this one is really important for people to know about because if you supplement with this probiotic throughout the winter, it reduces your chances of um, getting sick, and primarily with like a stomach bug. So it can reduce your chances of developing norovirus, even if you've been exposed. It can prevent traveler's diarrhea. So it's a great one to take with you if you're traveling overseas.
Okay.
And it's really helpful even for children during the flu season. Again, we're talking about the stomach flu, which is different than influenza, but it's really a powerful one.
Okay. So why only in the winter for that one?
Well, you could take it all year round and maintain that benefit. It's just that it's more common for people to develop stomach bugs typically in the winter.
Okay.
Um, our immune system tends to be a little bit stronger in the summer months, but yeah, you could take it whenever.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Okay. What else you got?
Well, I think another one that's really important and can be really helpful for people are just knowing that there's an entire database that people can access. And basically, this database has been created to allow people to see what probiotics have shown clinical efficacy for what condition.
Okay.
So there's everything from utilizing probiotics to decrease symptoms of eczema, to supporting your immune system, to acting as a motility agent, so getting the food moving through your system. For people who struggle with constipation, some of these probiotics can be very helpful. And there are even probiotics that can reduce, like if someone has what we would call hypersensitivity or bloating and pain, there are probiotics that can help with that. Now, probiotics are not a magic bullet all on their own, so their benefit is, while it is significant, it cannot overcome if there are other issues going on. So if someone's dealing with, dysbiosis, they'll have a limited benefit in terms of the probiotics until they get that under control.
Okay. Okay. That's really interesting about the database. I would love to look
Yeah.
into that because all the commercials about the probiotics are, this probiotic will fix everything.
Right.
And again, we get back to that all-in-one kind of magic bullet type of thinking. I had no idea, though, that there were different probiotics for different conditions and different issues. So that's really good to know. And you will tell us how to access that database, yes?
I will. I actually have I have a probiotic guide that I can share with you in the show notes, or I can list the actual site, but there's some key tips that I share in that because it really guides you through how to make a good decision around a probiotic so that you're choosing the one that's going to have the most efficacy or to be the most effective.
Okay. Do you have that on your website?
I do have it on my website and I'm happy to link to it too, if that's helpful.
Okay, yes. If you send me the link, then I'll just add it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I'm looking forward to that. All right. So, what are some of the foods or substances or behaviors that can destroy or damage the gut biome?
Mhm. So that's another really good question and also very broad, but I would say the main okay. So in when we think about the gut and issues people have with the gut, there's sort of two camps that people fall into. They're likely either experiencing irritable bowel syndrome or they're experiencing irritable bowel disease. And those are two distinctly different things.
Okay.
So, irritable bowel disease is an inflammatory bowel disease, such as ulcerative colitis or um, like
Is diverticulitis one of them?
diverticulitis. Thank you. I
Okay.
was trying to think of the word. Irritable bowel syndrome is actually where there isn't that inflammation necessarily in the digestive tract, but there are uncomfortable symptoms, and they can be diarrhea, constipation, gas, bloating, pain, and they have far reaching effects. So while you're experiencing those maybe as your primary digestive symptoms, you might also be experiencing brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, a whole host of issues that are sort of downstream effects. So the reason I bring it back to this is because sometimes people will have neither. They won't have irritable bowel syndrome, they won't have irritable bowel disease, but they might be experiencing other things that seem unrelated. So that can be anything from chronic pain to arthritis to behavioral issues in children, and it can be connected back to the gut in some cases. So I share that with you, but the two primary ones, irritable bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, are the most common. Now, irritable bowel disease is sort of in a category of its own. It's a lot more to get into, and I think we'll avoid that for today. But irritable bowel syndrome is really common in the population. And in about 60% of irritable bowel syndrome cases, it's actually a result of a food poisoning event. So,
Really?
yeah. So, what happens is that if someone gets food poisoning or they get some sort of parasite like Giardia, or there's a whole bunch that can have this effect. But what can happen is when they get sick with that, they get really ill. So if you've ever had traveler's diarrhea, if you've ever had Montezuma's revenge, these are the bugs that can actually cause this problem. And what can happen is there is eventually some nerve damage that happens to the cells that are responsible for initiating the peristaltic movement or the contraction of your small intestine. And the small intestine should be, it's not a sterile environment, but it doesn't really house your microbiome. Your microbiome is primarily, and we're talking about the gut microbiome here because you have many different microbiomes, but
Right.
the large intestine is where your microbiome typically, well, it is where it is housed. However, you can get this bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine as a result of these nerve cells no longer firing properly, and you get reduced motility, meaning there's less of that peristaltic movement those contractions that are moving food through your small intestine. So you get
Okay.
bacterial overgrowth that occurs. And this is what causes small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, which is it's what causes a lot of the irritable bowel syndrome for people. And it's something that people can test for.
Okay. Okay. So let me just make sure I'm following. Um, the two categories of bowel issues are IBS
Mhm.
and IBD.
Right.
And the IBS is triggered, what you said, 40-60% by food poisoning?
Yeah, somewhere in that range. Um,
Okay.
so it's a significant contributor to the development of IBS. The
Okay.
other contributors are things like celiac disease and um, food sensitivities, but those can sometimes occur as a result of food poisoning.
Okay. So given all of these variables in
Mhm.
gut health, how do you work with individuals specifically to tease out what their issue is, and what your treatment plan will be for them?
So it goes back to trying to figure out what that root cause is always. So um, if someone comes to me and they, for example, are saying, I have a lot of problems with constipation, I'm really bloated, I have a ton of brain fog, those are some pretty typical signs that they're probably dealing with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so what I'll do with them is, one, we do a pretty comprehensive intake. So I'm asking them a lot of questions about their health history, kind of looking at the timeline of their disease progression or their symptom progression to get some insight into what's been going on. And then, if it seems appropriate, I may order for them something called a hydrogen methane 3-hour breath test, where we can actually see the rise in gases that would indicate that they have something like SIBO. So, that is one of the tools that's used to kind of help us understand. And then from there, we can determine what kind of approach they want to take if they do have SIBO. Lots of gastroenterologists and physicians will use a certain type of antibiotic called rifaximin. The challenge with rifaximin is, one, it's extremely expensive. So if their insurance doesn't cover it, it can cost up to $1,000 um, per dosage, or not dosage, but
Wow.
prescription. Yeah. And two, it's only going to clear out the bacteria. And most times people are, or I shouldn't say most times, but sometimes people also have some fungal overgrowth in their small intestine, especially when they have, this difficulty with that peristaltic motion, clearing it out. And so in those people, if you give them an antibiotic like that, which it is a fantastic antibiotic in that it isn't systemic, so it's primarily going to stay within the small intestine. So that's good. However, when you give someone that antibiotic, and if they do have some issues with small intestinal fungal overgrowth, I've seen very frequently that those people will then overgrow yeast and whatever, like if they have candida or whatever, it can overgrow. So that can sometimes induce an imbalance or worsen an imbalance. And in those people, they're going to see more bloating, sometimes more issues with constipation actually can occur. So um, the other thing that people can do is they can utilize some natural antimicrobials that are more selective. And this is where I think people don't know that they have that option. And I didn't know that I had that option when I was diagnosed with SIBO, and I was given rifaximin, and it didn't help me get better. And I was doing the low FODMAP diet and all of these things that are supposed to, supposedly help you get better. And that diet is really restrictive. Are you familiar with that diet, Glenn? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've seen the charts, and I've actually had a registered dietitian go over it with me because of my issues. But tell us, what are some of the natural antimicrobials?
So those are typically going to be ones that contain there's some very specific brands that you'd want to utilize, and I'm afraid to state them online like this in
No,
this
no,
setting.
that's totally okay for
But
you
I
not
can
to say
I
it.
can tell you what some of the agents are, just because I don't want people self-treating, because we could get into some legal
No,
liability.
yeah, we definitely don't want that. Just what some of the helpful
Yeah.
elements are.
So here's what I would say. It's really important to work with somebody who's trained in this, who, and whenever I tell somebody, when I give them advice about finding a practitioner, I encourage them to find someone who's had it. Because when you've been through something, you have a level of nuance and understanding that someone who might have been trained in it but's never experienced it doesn't necessarily have. And in my case, having gone down this traditional route that totally failed for me, and wondering if I didn't do it correctly, wondering if, I didn't follow the FODMAP diet strictly enough, which, by the way, that diet is pretty problematic because it's not presented to the public as a short-term solution, which it's not a solution. It's meant to be a short-term diet to decrease your symptoms, because when you have bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine and you consume those foods, they tend to have a lot of fiber in them. And it's the fiber that gets fermented by the bacteria that's in the wrong place. Remember, that bacteria should be in your large intestine. Now it's taking up residence in your small intestine. And when it ferments those fibers, you get symptoms: gas, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, depending on the type of overgrowth you have. And so when someone says, here, go on a low FODMAP diet, it's meant to just reduce symptoms while you're treating. It's not meant to be a long-term solution. If
Okay.
you if you
I,
stay on that diet long term, you actually will harm your microbiome because you're starving it of some of these really important fermentable fibers.
okay. I'm really glad you said that because everything I've read about FODMAPs is it's long term.
No,
And
no,
you're right, it's very restrictive. And I looked at it, I'm like, oh, well, my diet is already strict enough. We're going to
right.
take more away forever. That's not helpful to me. So I'm glad you said that because it is misleading the information that's out there.
And so, Glenn, you just said something that I think is really important. You said that your diet's already restricted. And so that makes me wonder, are you dealing with food sensitivities?
I have food allergies. I have
Mhm.
food sensitivities. I self-diagnosed myself with IBS about 20 years ago. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with diverticulitis.
Yeah.
So I minimize things that my body reacts to.
So this is really important, and I'm so glad you shared that with me, and thank you for sharing that with me. And the thing to know about this is, if you have long-term IBS, it result in more inflammation that can lead to IBD. Sometimes people develop IBD without IBS, but what I want to share about that is, often there's like a cascade or a series of events that occur. And food allergies and food sensitivities, which are distinctly different, as you well know, also can happen as a result of what's called intestinal permeability. And this SIBO that we've been talking about can actually lead, and does lead, to this intestinal permeability. And then what happens is people become more and more reactive to the foods that they're eating, and they'll try to eliminate some and they'll get relief, but then they keep like finding that they're eliminating more and more foods. And that's not always the case, but it is commonly the case, and it was for me as well.
Okay. So when you say permeability, you mean that substances are going through the colon wall that shouldn't be?
Almost.
Okay.
Very, very good guess. So the small intestine is where most of the nutrient absorption happens. So, when we think about the small intestine and the large intestine, they kind of have very different functions. So the small intestine has these finger-like projections that line the interior of the small intestine. And the purpose of these is to increase the surface area of the small intestine so that you're able to absorb more nutrients. And if you were to spread them out, it would actually be the surface area of a tennis court. So it's kind
Wow.
of incredible.
Okay.
Um, when you have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, it can cause what's called intestinal permeability. And what that is between the cells of the lining of the intestines, you have these junctions. And this is where nutrient absorption happens. So um, nutrients might be absorbed via what's called passive diffusion. So these junctions might loosen slightly to allow the broken down food particle to enter your bloodstream, or facilitated diffusion, where that food particle, once it's broken down, fits into a receptor and it's pulled across that cell wall into your bloodstream. And so with intestinal permeability, what happens is you start to get too much loosening of these tight junctions,
Okay.
and food particles that haven't been properly broken down yet, and bacteria and other things are able to enter your bloodstream. And when that happens, your immune system may tag it as a foreign invader. And so then you start to mount different immune responses to it. The case of a true food allergy, like you did mention you've experienced, that's called an IgE mediated reaction. And those reactions are characterized by, they're also on a spectrum. On the milder end, you might have like flushing or hives. On the more severe end, you may have something like anaphylaxis.
Mhm.
And then with a food sensitivity, that's a different pathway. So while they can both occur as a result of intestinal permeability, a food sensitivity is more of an inflammatory immune response. So there are certain mediators that are released by your white blood cells that can drive inflammation. And I say this because that can result in joint pain, that can result in acne, worsening of eczema, it can result in brain fog, it can be delayed. So you may experience that anywhere from minutes to up to 3 days after you've consumed that food.
Mhm.
So they're a little different than a food allergy.
Yes, yes. And what drives me crazy is people think that food allergies and food intolerances or sensitivities are the same. I'm like, no, they're not.
Right. Yes.
They're not.
And the good thing is that we can actually reverse a lot of the food sensitivities by sealing up that leaky gut. So clearing the overgrowth, sealing up that intestinal permeability. And there's some really important tools we have at our disposal, like glutamine, marshmallows, slippery elm. All those are great for healing that lining. And then giving your immune system a break. So we might remove those foods for a period of 6 weeks if it's less reactive food, or up to 3 months for people who have a really strong response. And remember, this isn't an allergy, this is a sensitivity we're talking about.
Mhm.
An allergy, you would need immunotherapy, and that's a whole different ballgame. But you can get a lot of improvement and a lot of gut healing by doing this. And this is why it's so important to also recognize that these diets are never the solution. They're a temporary band-aid to reduce symptoms while you address these deeper issues.
If they're even secure band-aids. I mean, I've used band-aids for cuts where they didn't stick or it was too small or too big. So the diet itself, these fad diets just drive me nuts because they really don't address the issue.
Right. And when I said diet, I was specifically talking about the FODMAP diet. I should have
Okay. Okay.
clarified that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so speaking about diets, even though you weren't talking about weight loss diets, I
Yeah.
did read something also on your website where you say that weight reduction is not about restriction.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Oh, I am so passionate about this topic. Women have been so misled on weight loss for, I don't know how long, probably hundreds of years, but diet culture is so toxic and so ubiquitous in our culture. And a lot of what I do with women is help them, one, to start to tune those messages out. And really, again, let's look at the root cause of what's going on with weight gain. And a lot of what drives weight gain today is it has more to do with sort of gut health, inflammation, and our exposure to toxic chemicals that end up causing these hormonal imbalances. And a lot of women are being told today, like, um, you have hormonal issues, we've got to fix your hormones, but they don't really know what that means. Have you heard that messaging?
I have. I have. You
Did
know,
it?
women of a certain age gain weight because of their hormones, or
Yeah,
yeah, I've heard those messages, and they're not very helpful.
they're not helpful. And really, uh, there's this giant elephant in the room when it comes to weight loss that no one's talking about. And well, some people are talking about it, but not enough. And that is the fact that we are constantly these days being inundated with endocrine disruptors. Women in the morning, typically the average woman in the US puts on 80 different endocrine disruptors just by applying her hair and makeup.
Wow.
And what an endocrine disruptor does, I know I'm using really complex terminology here. What an endocrine disruptor does is it messes up your hormones.
Okay.
So, phthalates, parabens, these are words people have probably heard. There's a movement in clean beauty, in skincare to remove these products or to remove those ingredients. The Environmental Working Group, they have a great database called Skin Deep that is really helpful for finding better quality makeup. And then there's the app Think Dirty, which is a great app for finding clean skincare and makeup. But this is one of the challenges because when we're exposed to these kinds of chemicals, what ends up happening is we overburden our detoxification pathways. And I'm sorry all of this is so complex, but I'm doing my best to break it down in a way that's understandable. So when we really want to look for root cause, it is complex, right? Because we again are looking at how these systems in our bodies work. And we're really trying to assess what's going on in this individual. So for all of us, these are important considerations. And if we think about how many chemicals we're exposed to on a daily basis today in comparison to 1970,
Oh,
it
it's way
is
more.
it is unbelievable. It is off the charts. And that increase in chemicals very much correlates with the increase in diabetes, weight gain, um, metabolic disorders, thyroid issues, and there's a reason for that. It's
Okay.
because the chemicals we're being exposed to actually will bind to some of the receptor sites that our hormones should be binding to. And so they're acting as what are called a xenoestrogen in some cases, or a xenobiotic. And what that means is it's basically this chemical is blocking your hormones from being able to fit into the receptor site and help you have hormonal balance.
Okay. Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yes, it makes total sense to me. And yes, you're using a lot of words that I might need a dictionary for later, but it's all good. It's all good. And I did have Dr. Lindsay Elmore on last year, and she said that if your doctor is telling you that calories in versus calories out equals weight loss and you're not losing weight, then they're wrong, because that indicates an inflammation problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So it is all connected, isn't it?
It is. And it's even more complex than just simply inflammation. So, when we're talking about gut health and how it impacts weight loss, gut health can contribute to inflammation, especially if you have intestinal permeability, what like we were discussing, which can drive weight gain and it can drive weight loss resistance, meaning like you can diet all you want and you're having a really hard time losing weight, or you might diet, and this is, I don't recommend this, but you might lose some weight and then you regain it all plus some.
Hmm.
So usually those people are definitely dealing with some sort of inflammatory component. There's kind of three different pillars when we think about weight gain. One is inflammation, and that definitely goes back to gut health. Two is your body's detox pathways and the level of of chemical exposure you're experiencing. And so some simple things there are, filter your water, get a good quality water filtration system. Make sure that you're using clean beauty products. Try to reduce your exposure to endocrine disruptors like fragrance, especially those air fresheners people have.
Okay.
Those are another major endocrine disruptor. So that's another pillar. So we want to avoid our exposure to these chemical pollutants, and we want to support our body's detox pathways. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're not deficient in the nutrients that support detox, and making sure you're eliminating every day. So you're having a daily poop. You must be having a daily poop to lose weight. So
Okay.
it's critical.
Yeah, we had to go there, people.
Yep.
Okay, that's very fascinating stuff. One other thing I do want to cover with you
Yeah.
is people with IBS or IBD. One of the leading treatments that I've read is stress reduction.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain to people how being more relaxed, eliminating those stress triggers can really help your gut, your digestion, your overall health?
Yeah. I'm really passionate about this as well.
Okay.
And I'm so glad you brought it up, Glenn, because it's such an important topic, which I'm sure, I mean, in your career field, I'm sure this is something you talk about with people
Mhm.
a lot.
Yes.
So to bring it back to that gut health connection, when we're stressed, we move out of our body's parasympathetic response, which is when we're in rest and digest. And we move into that fight or flight or freeze, that more um, sympathetic response. And when we're in that response, our cortisol increases, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And what cortisol is meant to do is to get us to be able to run away from whatever that threat is.
Mhm.
So in today's modern world, our body doesn't know the difference between reading a stressful email and being chased by a tiger.
I know the difference.
Mentally, we might know the difference. Physically, not so much. And so what happens is our body shuts down digestion, and it gets us ready to fight or flee or freeze. And so you might notice for yourself, what is your response in stressful situations? Do you get more activated? Are you like on and like doing a million tasks? Are you really feeling that stress? And when you're in that mode, your body's not going to be in an optimal place to digest your food. So if you're eating lunch while you're super stressed out by work, and you're, let's say, on your computer, and you're not paying attention, you're not breathing, you're not showing your body that you're safe, you're actually really impairing digestion. Not only is there limited blood flow going to your digestive organs, but you're decreasing the amount of hydrochloric acid that's secreted. And remember, hydrochloric acid breaks your food down. So there's so many things that are impacted by staying in that high stress state. And there are a lot of really helpful ways that we can kind of close that stress loop, or tell your body it's safe, and move you back into that parasympathetic rest and digest. And I'm sure you are an expert on this far more than I am. But that's one of those reasons that stress really affects digestion and gut health.
Yeah, well, thank you for that explanation, because it makes a lot of sense to me, and I just don't think that people understand how it works with being
Right.
overly stressed and having these digestive and gut issues. So your explanation was pretty clear. So hopefully people will take this information and implement some more stress reduction.
Yeah.
Now, you are a certified lifestyle eating and performance therapist.
Hmm.
So does that mean that you will take in all of these different components and work with that individual in front of you so they can live and be better?
Yes. Yeah. So I like to tell people, I think about health as a pyramid. And on the bottom, that makes up the majority of the change. It's going to be these lifestyle factors. So getting enough sleep, managing stress, eating properly. And when I say eating properly, I'm not talking about dieting. I'm talking about, do you have nutrient deficiencies? Are you breaking your food down properly? Are you getting the right balance of the nutrients that you need in your body? Enough protein, enough carbs, enough fat? Because, there's been every diet under the sun over the last 50 years telling women to cut out all kinds of food groups. That is not
Mhm.
helpful and is not effective, and really just messes up their relationship with food, confuses them, makes them feel like they don't have agency, like they don't have the self-efficacy they need to create change and to be healthy. And it robs people of joy and pleasure, which are critical to a good, healthy life, a good, healthy relationship with food, like demonizing all these foods that are actually good for us, including chocolate. You know, um, we need variety, we need pleasure. And so my point is just that this base of the pyramid is really helping people sort of regain connection with their bodies, helping them feel empowered in their health, empowered in their lifestyle choices, and really feel good, like in every way. And then the next layer of that pyramid, so if you move up one section, would be, addressing some of these underlying issues, like if you have SIBO, correcting that. And then at the top of the pyramid are these really like smaller things like supplements, antimicrobial agents that we might utilize, probiotics, prebiotics. None of them are going to work on their own if we're not incorporating the entire pyramid. Um, but they can be really effective and kind of get you over that hump that you've maybe encountered in your own health.
Okay. Okay. Um, it's all about interconnectedness and wholeness, is what it
Yeah,
sounds like. Addressing the whole person and not just, a pound here and there. So I,
absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Do you have any programs or classes for people? I know you work with individuals, but do you have anything else that you offer?
Yeah, so I do have a 12-week weight loss program that I bring people through. Um, that can be done one-to-one. I sometimes offer it as a group format, sometimes because I've taught weight loss for over a decade, and that group learning experience can be helpful sometimes, and I think weight loss is one of those times where it can be. You still need some of that personalized approach in terms of like, what are your unique driving factors? So if someone's dealing with inflammation or gut health, we've got to address that. That can't be done in a group setting.
Okay.
But this lifestyle, that base of the pyramid, that can be done in a group setting. And a
Okay.
group setting can provide camaraderie and support in a way that sometimes is lacking in just an individual one-on-one. So I think they marry nicely together. And then I do a lot of one-to-one work with people in more of a like, let's really figure out what the root cause is here and address it. Um, and and that's more of again, sort of a step-by-step process, but one that's very much tailored to the individual. And right away, like, let's figure out what's going on.
Okay, fantastic. So how can someone get in touch with you if they have questions, if they want to work with you?
So my website is probably the best way to reach me. There's different, it'll take you to different options. You can apply for coaching. You can set up a discovery call with me if you want to talk about what working together would look like. So everything's basically um, on my website in order to
Okay.
connect.
Okay, and what is the name of that download that you mentioned earlier?
So it's called the Ultimate Probiotic Guide. And I created that. It has the links to the database that I was talking about. And
Okay.
it also explains some key points about picking a probiotic that are really important.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So this has been a fascinating discussion. I have learned some things. I was actually taking notes while you were speaking.
Oh, good.
So I am going to follow up on the new information for sure because it's an
Fantastic.
ongoing process. It's
It is.
it's it's you know just learning what works and what doesn't work for me and on any given day or any given emotional state. So
Yes.
it's an ongoing process. So I'm taking this new information in and I will use it. So thank you so much.
You're so
Now,
welcome.
in what nugget, what I know gut health is a huge topic.
Mhm.
Can you narrow it down though to just what one nugget you want people to know about having a healthy gut?
That's such a good question. I think the one nugget that I would like to share is no matter how long you've been struggling or how difficult it has been for you, achieving a healthy digestive tract is possible. And it can feel like a lot of winding roads, but it's possible for everybody. And so I think I would just say that, and this goes beyond beyond gut health. It encompasses weight loss too, and really any sort of health goal. It is obtainable. I promise you that. It's just figuring out what's blocking you from achieving it. And I know that part's not simple.
No, it's not. But though what you just said is very hopeful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inspiring to know that it can be corrected no matter how long it's been going on.
Absolutely. The human body has incredible capacity for change and healing.
Yeah, it does. It does. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. You were just going. I loved it.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. It was such a pleasure, and I'm so honored that you invited me to come on today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for making time and for, telling us what you did. That's really
Oh,
important. And I hope even if just one person takes the information you shared and will use it to live better and be better, I'm happy. I'm
thank
totally
you.
happy with that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Please allow me to leave you with this nourishing thought. Follow the science is a mantra born during the pandemic, which I believe was created to shut down diverse ideas and opinions. However, I do think follow the science is appropriate when it comes to gut health. A healthy gut promotes overall physical health and mental health because 95% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. Physically, serotonin helps with sleep, bowel movements, and the production and absorption of nutrients. Mental health wise, serotonin reduces anxiety and depression, the two most common mental health issues that American adults face, despite the plethora of media reports that only focus on the more severe disorders. People who have normal levels of serotonin tend to be happier, calmer, more focused, less anxious, and more emotionally stable. So if you're having any issues with sleep, elimination, depression, or anxiety, then please consult your primary healthcare provider. Consult with a registered dietitian or certified nutritionist for an evaluation to review your treatment options and to learn how to naturally boost low levels of serotonin. For more on gut health, please read my blog on glenalex.com. And until next time, be well. Thank you again for tuning in to the Glen Alex Show. Please like, subscribe, and share.